Today, I will be speaking with Jon Stewart. Jon is a former pro wrestler and small business owner. Jon is also a former candidate for Illinois governor as well as U.S. Congress. He's a father, grandfather, and husband. He has been aware of the video that we're going to be speaking about today for over 20 years since its release, as well as the fact that he's been investigating this intricately for the last 5 years. He has subsequently received reprisals for his coming public about this investigation. All this we will be digging into today. I'm going to start this out by actually playing the uncut, unedited alien interview for you right out of the gate. And then we're going to jump into the interview with Jon. All right, so Jon Stewart, thank you so much for being with me today. As I just mentioned, we've already kind of done an introduction and actually played a clip of that interview that we'll be discussing part of today. So I first just wanted to jump in with giving you the opportunity to let the audience know who you are and how you got interested in this topic in the first place.
Thank you for having me on your show, and thank you to your listeners and viewers. Always a pleasure and an honor to speak to anyone that will sit here and listen to me babble about this crazy journey and experience, which is really what it has turned into be. I just turned 57. My name is Jon Stewart. I live in the North Shore of Chicago. That's the area where all the John Hughes high school movies were filmed. I love telling people that because it gives them a intimate knowledge of where I live. And was a high school, college semi-pro football player. Became a professional wrestler on ESPN with the AWA. I was a pro wrestler on and off for 20 plus years. I was a small businessman, and in the time of being a small businessman and being a father and a husband. I also ran for United States Congress, and I got national headlines for that because of the Jesse Ventura fame of when he won the governorship of Minnesota. A year and a half later, I ran for Congress, so it kind of the media loved that another wrestler was running. And I also ran for Illinois governor in 2018. Something I'm very proud of. I think something that is very revelatory to my this investigation. People have criticized me that, well, who cares that he ran for governor? It doesn't matter. It does matter. Running for governor as statewide office means that I have the ability to organize, the ability um, to be collaborative, the ability to gather a large group of people to believe in me and to listen to me, fundraising ability, being vetted by the Illinois and Chicago press, which could be vicious. And I went through that process. The stick to itiveness of spending a year and a half on the road by myself with no campaign team, no tour bus, sleeping at rest stops, changing from regular clothes into a suit at the back of dollar stores and laundromats before a debate. You talk about grassroots, and to stick with that, and to go from number one back to number three for the Libertarian Caucus, and then get back to number one uh, without giving up. It is tantamount to this investigation, which I wanted to quit many times and didn't. Was the tenacity what I've learned that I learned uh, when running for governor that I transferred over to this investigation. So saying that I ran for governor, it does matter and it is revelatory. And in 1997, I saw this crazy shockumentary on the UPN network that was entitled The 1997 Alien Interview. And it was bizarre to me because the alien wasn't gray, it was tan. It had round eyes, it didn't have the typical gray alien almond eyes. It was a very bad production if it was a hoax, because the medics or the doctors that came in the room to tend to this being were not in pressurized suits. There was a chair off to the side. There were two shoulders of military men in the foreground that kept getting in the way of the camera. It just seemed way too casual. And this bizarre, what we think, this physiological monitor next to the bean, which we still, it's the only thing in this investigation we have still not uncovered 100%. And then with the Victor testimony, the whistleblower who brought out this film that was shot in 1991 in an underground facility, I've never heard anyone still to this day speak that intelligently and that scientifically. And I just felt that there was no way a screenwriter in California in
Mhm.
1996 could have came up with the dialogue for Victor in this documentary, and for Victor to go on an unscripted radio show, Coast to Coast AM, right before the documentary and take an hour and a half of unrehearsed, unscripted questions and answer them so eloquently. It was really Victor that made me believe, even back then, something is not right with this video. This is, I just can't slough it off as a hoax. And it was in 2019, and I'll end the beginning right here. Start of COVID, and a documentary producer in Hollywood asked me for ideas. And I told him about this one, and he shot it down, saying it was too going to be too complicated. Boy, was he right. And I picked up the ball and said, I'm going to figure something out about this film. And figuring out something about this film, I'm here 5 years later, finding out basically the truth and the provenance of this crazy, crazy, and historic document.
Thank you, John. That is a interesting introduction, and I think it would be really interesting for our audience if we could kind of dive into what was the first thing that jumped out to you. Obviously, you mentioned Victor and his speech patterns, but was there something specific about the video, or what was the first piece of investigation that you did relevant to that video that kind of started to put up the question marks in your mind?
It was the monitor because it was something physical in the video that I could research. You know, I knew no one. James. I knew no one in the military. I knew no one in government. Even though I ran for Congress and governor that could help me, couldn't call a United States senator and say, "Could you help me figure out if an alien retention program took place south of Area 51?" I mean, they would have laughed me out of the room or laughed me out of the business luncheon. So I saw that monitor, and I didn't even know where to start, how to find out who Victor was. But I saw that monitor and I said, "Let me start here." And again, folks, I would like to tell you, you have to remember, even to this day, as I'm sitting here, I simply wanted to find the truth. I do not care either way whether this video was real or not. I went at it with as a journalistic approach, vetting my sources 2 and 3 levels, and always sticking to the fact that I did not care, um, whether this video was real or a hoax. I just wanted to find the truth. So I saw the monitor on January 3rd, 2019, sitting in my car, and I'm like, it's the start of COVID. My family business, like every family business back then, was, in disarray. And I had some time off, and I'm like, let me figure this out. And so I contacted PhD fellows that were doing the history of physiological monitors. Great place to start. I contacted Space Labs, who made monitors for NASA back in the 60s, and I contacted Hewlett Packard, who also made monitors in the 80s and 90s. I thought a good cohort of people and companies, where I could get the answer of what this monitor was. The problem is none of them knew what this monitor was. So they all scratched their head and wrote me back or told me over the phone, "We have no idea." Folks, I was going to the experts in the world of physiological monitors who were telling me that this alleged hoaxed video had the most bizarre high-tech physiological monitor that they've ever seen, as I sent all of them the video. And I thought, well, this has gotten very interesting real quick. I was 2 hours into this investigation, and I now have a physiological monitor that no one can explain. So I asked people, how could a second tier video production company in a strip mall in Beverly Hills, California, all of a sudden invent and come up with the most high-tech physiological monitor known to man? So say the experts. And that is when I realized that I fell down the rabbit hole, and uh, I could be getting myself into something that I might not be able to get out of. And I'm still stymied to this day about the monitor, but that was the first item that I investigated.
Interesting. So you mentioned that that is kind of like one of the things that is sort of still unanswered about this entire investigation. Would
Yep.
you mind going into some of the things that maybe kind of gave credence to the possibility of these videos being legitimate?
That's one of the mistakes people made. First of all, I pat myself only one time whenever I do these podcasts about my 5-year investigation. I believe that I am, and I really hope your listeners and viewers hear this and it takes down the negative rhetoric and the skepticism. I believe still to this day, I am the only UFO researcher that is willing to come forward and look in the camera and say, I was wrong about this. I made a mistake about that. I went down the wrong direction this way. Um, this was false information. Uh, uh, and I truly don't know what the real answer is. I can give you percentages, but I'm comfortable to look at people and say, I can't give you a definitive answer. And I'm proud of that because I don't know many UFO researchers that stand on that type of platform of telling people the truth as they know it, and willing to admit they're wrong when they're wrong, and willing to say and put their ego in check and say, I still don't know the 100% truth. So, so I'm done selling my experiences. And it's these stories and experiences that I had investigating this, which, as someone once said, is the totality of evidence that lead people and myself to say, this is not this is not making sense. This isn't a badly crafted hoax. There is something more to this video. So let me briefly, and thank you for a great question. Let me briefly go over it. Let's start with this. Victor says that this interview process happened at S4. We have the FOIA, where in 1962, when John F. Kennedy and Senator Goldwater started the DIA, that we were told the DIA took over the alien retention and interrogation program from the CIA and the Air Force in the early 60s. And this is maybe not the alien program, but the start of the DIA is congressional and archived records. We have a building being built south of Area 51, where Victor said this facility housed aliens and had a retention and interview program. We have a FOIA where the building was built in the early 60s. I have the document, and it's called S2, Site 2. The building is called S2 Alpha. We have two people that have DD-214s from the military that put them at Papoose Lake that say the building is there, S2 Alpha, and underneath it, two people, folks, not one, two. Two people who say underneath the S2 Alpha building is this S4 complex where the alien retention program, the alien housing complex uh, was, and this interview program took place. So I have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt the building, the facility, and the government entity, the agency that runs that building, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency. I have two people that have claimed that claim that the alien program is real, that it exists at this building. I have found out who Victor was. He's deceased. He was the biologist who was the caretaker for the deceased aliens in some sort of cryogenic fluid on the second level of S4. And he would show these bodies to dignitaries and people from the military and subcontractors who had the clearance to see these deceased aliens. He was the intermediary, the what I call him, the tour guide of these deceased aliens, and giving a background on where they were from and who they are and their designation. We have the designation of the being on this film. It's a type 3 called an other gray. It comes from the reticulum star system. He is terracotta tan. He is not a gray alien. He's about 4'3", almost little under 4 feet to 4 foot 5 inches tall. He is a synthetic being, which I would think the better definition would be an android, a robotic biological android, where um, he is organic, but he also has mechanisms inside of him. He does not have a physiology of a human being. He has a heart, lung, one sac organ, a very limited digestive tract. He does not have any sexual organs. This species reproduces in vitro, and he came to the facility in 1989. And we have the bombshell, which was I was sent by my main whistleblower, a Defense Intelligence Agency alleged internal memo of the investigation of this theft of this film. And it simply says the date was April 22nd, 1991. They called it another gray. And James, shockingly, it gives me the names of the five military men that were in the room, the two telepaths. I've gotten the picture of one of the telepaths. I want to repeat that. I have a photo of one of the telepaths in 1991 for this alien interview. Two of the men that were in this room, I can leak their names because the names have leaked out and they're dead. One was Rear Admiral Ted Schaefer. Another person was a Craig McPherson, who I thought was a cardiologist. He is actually was a scientist in 1995. He gave an interview to Linda Moulton Howell. So I have the building, I have the provenance of the beans, you have the men in the room. Yes, it could all be bullshit. Yes, I understand that. I have the names of the 2 doctors that attend to this being. I have made contact with one of the doctors, his second wife, who was his widow because he died. I made contact with her. I talked with her. I showed her the video. Yes, her husband is in a surgical mask and a hat, but she clearly recognized his eyes and the bridge of his nose. People have skepticized that fact. Are you trying to tell me that I can't recognize my wife during COVID with a surgical mask on and a ski hat? Of course I could. It's ridiculous. It's ardent skepticism that is really foolhardy. Um, we have the code word for entering this facility. We have James. I have the security clearance for this facility, which was Yankee white or Yankee black. We have the proof that on the bottom of this film, DNI, Department of Navy Intelligence, does exist. How do I know it exists? A naval aviator texted me. The Department of Naval Intelligence, it's real. It's an agency buried in the Department of Navy. It's where the spooks, the CIA for the Navy, this is where they live. That was his worded. I have a former CIA counterterrorism official, a high level official off the record, he's retired, who looked at me and said, "No, the DNI is real. It's not a fake. It's a real agency." He said the same thing, buried inside the Department of Navy. I've got the DNI on a program for a conference in Toronto, Canada. I have 2 intelligence officers that have both told me on camera for my documentary, the DNI is real. So how did a screenwriter in 1996 know DNI was real enough to emblazon it on the bottom of this film? And the bombshell, James, the number 27 that sits on the bottom of this film. 27 is the security designation, Yankee White. And if you have Yankee White, that means you have contact with the President of the United States. So if you saw 27 on a document or audiovisual documentation, if you did not have the designation Yankee White, you would have to leave the room. It's Yankee White because we think Colin Powell is the general to the left, his shoulder, but without a doubt, in that room was Admiral Ted Schaefer, who was the Colin Powell's chief liaison for intelligence for the Joint Chiefs, and we've proven we have him in the Oval Office helping Colin Powell brief George Bush the first. So that is why 27 is on this document. And to finish this crazy, haha, I've got all the proof. A man, a tech guru, came forward. I never knew this guy existed. His name is Nico. I will not give his last name. He came forward on a podcast to say, I have to tell you people something. I saw this exact video, but I saw it from a different angle. It was wider. There was more men in the room. But damn it, I saw that being, and it was just under an hour. James, we have proof that the aide to the right of the foreshadow aide in the foreshadow to the right is holding in his hand a Sony Walkman video cam that was hooked up to a video camera. So there was a 16 millimeter camera, official audiovisual documentation for the Air Force, and a video camera. What does this tech guru say? He saw a VHS tape of this video from a different angle. So it's proving the 2 cameras with more men in the room. Sure, the men that were on my list are shown in this video. I can't do any more. It could all
Yeah.
be bullshit. I'm sorry if I'm swearing, it's on radio. Could it all be could it all be fake? I guess so, but when you're calling people's widows, when you have names of men that were in intelligence and they were in the Oval Office, there was another Navy admiral that I emailed back and forth, and once I gave him the list with his name on it, he ghosted me. He was once a director of the DIA. We were gonna play golf together, and all of a sudden, when he sees his name, he cuts all communication off with me. And I will say, and Well, I'm sure you'll ask me about the incursion on my phone and the intelligence community. But folks, this is the information that I got. You can roll your eyes at it, or you can say, this is a pretty interesting provenance to this alleged hoax film.
That is certainly a lot to digest for folks who may not have heard this story before. I'll go ahead and say it, John, if you don't want to, but check out the Cosmic Road interview that Nico did, where he actually goes into this story that was just alluded to about that second camera. So that's Jack on Cosmic Road. He has about 2 hours of
A guy that I
cooperating.
never heard of before, validating one of the most bizarre things in this video, a military man holding a Sony Walkman video cam, which was available in 1991. So we said, well, are we seeing the videotape or are we seeing the 16 millimeter? And this guy comes along and says, no, I saw the VHS tape. So obviously there was two cameras and that VHS tape went to a scientist in Israel. And this is where the scientist showed Nico the second footage. Just amazing coincidence of tying all of the evidence together.
Yeah, that's definitely a compelling case. I think that one thing that I always try to do before we kind of progress any further is, so obviously what you're presenting is something that for a lot of folks, the uninitiated, this is a pretty salacious claim that you're making. So I think one thing that's always really good to do is just kind of lay out what sort of things would have to cross your path for you to change perspective and for you to say, you know what, I don't think that this is a legitimate video. Once we can kind of lay out or quote unquote steel man the argument that this is not a legitimate video, I think
Right.
we're in a position to move, forwards from there.
Yeah, well, one thing, a great question, by the way. One thing I want your viewers and listeners to know is, folks, I am not convinced it's 100% authentic either. I hope you champion me that I said that. I think 87% now that it is a real. I mean, when you have military intelligence people telling you the video is real and a DIA director ghosting you, instead of saying that video is a hoax, it was, I know it's a hoax and I wasn't there. When they don't say that, it makes you scratch your head. Um, and you know, some other things that make me, uh, that it could be real or could not be is the reaction of the intelligence community. Um, it is the fact that in 30 years, please listen to me on this. In 30 years, no one with any credible information has come forward from Hollywood to say, I did the alien puppet. I provided the food that day. I did central casting. I did wardrobe. I did the accounting. I provided the insurance. I rented the soundstage for that 3-minute film. No one. And not one hoax video, not one video that's out there has that provenance where no one has come forward to say, I hoaxed it. Anyone with credibility has, in 30 years, has never come forward. Does that make any sense? The director and the CEO of the production company have told me for 5 years, they're like, John, I don't know what else we could tell you. We didn't make that 3-minute video. Victor called us out of the blue. He first went to Fox, they threw him out. He went to us because he thought we were a lower level video production company and we would give him more wide berth in being secure and not using his name. He came to the production facility in a taxi cab. He didn't drive. They have vetted that he was a government employee, a biologist. I have his photo, which is not the infamous, people think it's Bob Dean, the famous ufologist and NATO allied, sergeant with NATO allied command. It's not Bob Dean. We've proven who Victor is. Could all that information be hoaxed or phony? I mean, I don't think so, but it's possible. James, if I could find something revelatory that I could say that this points to a hoax, I would. I just can't. I can't find anything. Every time I go down a hallway, metaphorically speaking, it leads me to somebody saying, or the evidence saying, we think this is real. Nothing screams hoax here. And if it is a hoax, it's the worst hoax ever conceived. Why would you have an interview of a gray alien and make them brown? Why would you give them round eyes? Why wouldn't you have the medics in pressurized suits to really hype up the seriousness of this video? You wouldn't do it so casually, like they did, like they presented it. I can't. I believe me, my life would be so much easier if I could have proved this was a hoax, ladies and gentlemen, back in 2019. And I will tell you an inside story. I had a Hollywood production company that would have put this on TV if I could have proved it was definitively was a hoax back in 2020, because they don't want to show things that will cause further questions and speculation by the viewers. Hollywood and the TV industry do not want that. Where they don't want to scare you. They don't want you walking away all nervous. They want you to be an Oak Island viewer where you want to come back the next week and the next week and the next week. They don't want to scare your pants off and have you run for the hills. And the fact that this video might be real, they felt it was. So if I could have proved this was a hoax, this thing would have been out in 2020. But I couldn't. I
I think your
can't.
life would be a lot
I'm trying
easier.
every way.
Yeah,
Pardon?
your wife would probably be a lot happier as well. And
And my
you know,
wife, and yeah, and she'd have a lot more sleep in the past 5 years. So
I'm sure, I'm
funny.
sure.
It's funny. She was listening to a podcast I was on last night, called Night Shift with Clint Weldon, great guy. And she hears that I spent $20,000 on this, and she looks up at me. She's like, "I thought it was 15." It's like she's like, "The money you've spent gets higher and higher every time I hear you on YouTube." She's been a trooper though. I tell you what, when people say they if it wasn't for a supportive spouse, they would be nothing or couldn't I am that guy. This my wife was a trooper through all of this, and 5 years of listening to documentaries at 2 o'clock in the morning and me writing notes like I'm a crazy lab professor in bed. I have to thank Joanne. She's been awesome, and she knows what the she understands the weight of this. That if we prove the preponderance of evidence that this is not a hoax, then what a Cuban uh, dying retired Catholic official told me in Havana in 2016, which was, if you could prove this film is real, unless somebody has a VHS tape of Moses parting the Red Sea or a Polaroid of the crucifixion, my son, you hold the greatest historical document in human history. Folks, this is what we're dealing with. This is not a game. This is not funny. This is very, very serious, potentially.
That is, yes, quite possible. There's a couple different videos we've talked about on this channel that might fall into that category. So moving forwards from that, I think we've kind of laid out your experience over that last 5 years. And I understand that not only have you found some interesting evidence that potentially proves the provenance of these videos, but also you haven't exactly been left alone, potentially, in the time that you've come public about this. So what sort of things have happened to you that sort of, indicate that maybe there is something more to this video than meets the eye?
Before I begin, I want to tell all of the skeptics and haters out there, I have sent emails, because a lot of my read but not deleted emails, and I'll get to that, are gone. I have sent emails. I have Amazon tech uh, department case numbers, people's names. I have police report numbers. I have FBI numbers. I have FOIA requests that have come back to me. I have text messages from the intelligence community. You are not going to trip me up that I am lying when I'm about to tell you. This is 1000% true on the souls of my children. And any parent out there, we don't swear on our children unless we're trying to get the point across. So let me start with that. In 2022, right before Memorial Day, I'm about to go on the Jeff Friends podcast. He has an internet radio show and an aggregate website of alternative news. He's had it for about 25 years. And going back and forth with producers and Jeff, talking about, we're going to talk about the monitor. It's my first public appearance truly about just the alien interview. And 2 days before that interview, while I was in Upper Michigan on vacation, all of my read but not deleted emails were gone. Gone. So the earliest email at that point was 2 days before Memorial Day. Everything else from business to my godfather who died in Vietnam, those emails with a memorial service, um, my prior physicals, just everything you would have for 7, 8 years old emails are gone. And my wife's like, "That's bizarre." The Jeff Rentz reporter producer said, "Well, that happens all the time. Our guests being bothered." I'm like, "Well, it's never happened to me." When I got home, I went to Amazon. While I sat looking at my phone, Amazon did a deep forensic electronic audit of my phone. While I was looking at my phone, you could see them going into the schematics of my phone. They said to me, um, "Folks, I'm just telling you what Amazon said. We have never seen this before." "What have you never seen before?" I asked. "That 4 different email platforms, all of those emails were swiped." Folks, it just wasn't my AOL. My AOL, my father's AOL that was on my iPhone, my iCloud, and a Gmail account. 4 email accounts had the read but not deleted emails swiped, gone. And Amazon told me in 2022, "We have never seen that before." We have never seen that. Okay. Now, I there's another time about when I was talking to the producers of the original documentary. I was in Wisconsin, and I know the old hourglass spinning. This was it. The whole screen was spinning around. It's like somebody doing CGI on my phone. I said, "I can't believe what's going on here." Let me fast forward. It calmed down a little bit. My at midnight, twice, my alarm goes off with this creepy, um, black, dark, like, um, cathedral music ringtone, and my stepson said, he's like, "John, think about the schematics of setting a ringtone. You have to clear your go into the home screen, go to alarm, set the time, set the AM, PM, set the ringtone, and then press start or activate it." I'm an old guy. I don't, 6 functions that happens on its own, and 3 days later, it happens again. My wife and I popped up, and it was because my phone was on the living room table. She's like, "What the how was that?" I went up there, I'm like, "I don't know, my alarm went off," and it goes off a second day. Folks, on a stack of Bibles, my daughter will attest to this, my whole family will attest to this. Jon Stewart brings his entire family into the family room where the desktop computer is to show my family the alien interview. They have never seen it before. As my youngest daughter is walking into the down the stairs into our TV den, whatever you'd like to call it, she gets a Snapchat from a person that's not her friend, that never requested her. She gets a Snapchat from somebody as she's walking to see daddy's crazy alien interview. The Snapchat person that she does not know asks her at that moment, "Do you really believe in aliens?" And I'm going to tell you something. My family, you want to talk about believers? They were evangelical level believers in the alien interview. And I wrote on a pizza box one time. I'm like, I lifted it up, and on the Sharpie on the pizza box, told my family without saying it out loud, we might be we might be monitored. And it was a very scary moment for my family. Let me fast forward. So I get this crazy Lockheed story. I really don't know if I want to go into it or not, but I get a crazy Lockheed story that Lockheed had an alien craft, special forces and a Lockheed team both descended on it. There was a firefight, people died. Very crazy story. I don't believe it, but it came from somebody that I believe was an actual person who claimed who he was. A week to 10 days later, after texting podcasters and people on my investigating team for the alien interview, all of my read emails, but not deleted, go missing off my phone. Well, this time my wife was like, "You are going to the police. You make a police report." I go. This was in January of this year. I go to the police department. I tell the police officer in my village the very quick 5-minute elevator pitch of what is going on, the alien interview. Folks, do you know that a police officer looked at me and said, "I don't think you're crazy at all. If what you're telling me is true and what you're at least investigating, I would come here too if my emails for the second time went missing." I called Amazon again. I get a woman named Arsh. I have the case ID number in case the skeptics out there don't believe this. She said, this is was even more scary than the first time with Amazon. She said, "John, the director in our forensic audit department is standing over me. He is telling me to tell you we have never seen." Oh, I'm sorry. I also told them about my wife sent me a text, and her entire text screen that I saw was milky white except for the present text. She said, "My director wants you to know that the only time we've ever seen milky screen is on photos to people. They that my director of Amazon from forensic audit department wants me to tell you that he has never heard of this happening on a text message to anyone." She said, "And again, we can't see anyone removing your deleted emails. It had to have been done from your phone." I said, "Well, why would I be calling you if I did it?" She's like, "I understand, Mr. Stewart. I'm just letting you know that it had to be done from your phone." Then 2 days after the Amazon audit, my contact names got erased, leaving only the phone numbers. So for 2 weeks, and it was a joke with all the business people in the automobile industry and in politics in the Chicago area that for 2 weeks, Jon Stewart was answering his phone, "Who is this?" Or when I'd get a text, "Who is this?" Insulting people. And I had to explain, "Look, my contact names have been erased and whatnot." So the police officer then said, "I need to take the incident number and file a report with the FBI." The FBI has not called me back. So then I am deer hunting. I'm going to end the story. And I know this is going to sound like a bar joke, but two former CIA officials own a microbrewery in the Midwest. I know it sounds like a joke, but it's the truth. The woman that owns it was such an ardent skeptic of life elsewhere. UFOs are a joke, but I was telling her about my emails disappearing. She sensed my consternation. I kept saying it's DARPA, it's the Pentagon. As I left with my cousins to go back to our hunting cabin, she came outside. She grabbed me underneath the elbow, pulled me to the side away from my cousins. She said, "Look, you seem like a nice guy. I just want to tell you this. It's not DARPA. It's not Pentagon." I said, "It's not what? Who stole possibly your emails?" I said, "Okay, the CIA." She's like, "No." She goes, "John, it's the NSA. It's the only company that could do that." Ladies and gentlemen, this was a former CIA officer with the linguistics department in the CIA, and her husband was a high level person in counterterrorism. And she tells me it was the NSA. Now I get an anonymous email about 12 days later saying, "John, we believe we." So let's I don't know who this group is. And I have the email, folks. "John, we believe that your phone was subject to a counterintelligence program called Stingray Centipede. We don't want you to worry. This wasn't because you're a drug dealer or you're involved in nefarious activities. It is simply most often used with a signed warrant from a judge. It's most often used in counterintelligence. They just want to see what you know, what has been sent to you." I'm asking everyone, and I'm going to end it here, this segment. If a video production company in Beverly Hills that was putting out a comedy golf video created this hoax, why is all of this happening? This forensic um, incursion into my phone, into my emails by the intelligence community, because I've been told it's only two people that could do it, G above and G the government. Why is this happening? What is this fat 57-year-old grandfather from Chicago me, and I'm being self-deprecating, what have I found that is so alarming to the intelligence community for them to go in front of a judge, allegedly, and get a warrant to to spy on and to go onto my phone, and for them to screw with me, remove names, steal emails, so on and so forth. I'm not going to make the. I'm not for the skeptics. I'm not going to give my conclusion. I'm just asking the people out there, what do they think?
Yeah, just apply some critical thinking and make your own decisions. We're not here to tell anybody what to think, but rather to present the evidence as it is. And I also think it's fair to assume that there is certainly no privacy, whether it be on the phone or anywhere else. So
No,
yeah,
great point.
yeah, that's goes without saying, perhaps. So I want to just kind of rewind for a second. You mentioned that there was, well, multiple sources that you've been in touch with, and principally one primary source who presented
Correct.
you with a report that kind of breaks down what was occurring in this video.
Yes,
So
correct.
what have you done with that report? And is that something that you've presented to something like Congress, or like how are you taking this forwards? And yeah, can you kind of walk me through that?
Yeah, another great question. This is the funniest thing with the haters and the skeptics. The report that he gave to Congress is all bull. Um, to tell your listeners and viewers that are truly open-minded, the report that I gave to Congress was from the DIA, an agency that Congress started in the 60s. We basically, in my opinion, the messenger boy from the Defense Intelligence Agency. I took a retranscribed report, meaning there was no top secret on it. It was a memo from one person to another and then sent to me. There was no top secret on it. Um, and I simply took that report, a couple of still photos from this film, and I took it to Congress uh, and on Martin Luther King Day of 2023 to Mike Gallagher in Wisconsin, who started the whistleblower amendment. From there, I sent it to Andre Carson in Indiana. I then sent it to Kristen Hillebrand and Senator Rubio to their offices. Their staff members were absolutely wonderful to me. And then when Tim Burchett was made the de facto liaison to investigate this by I believe it was the House Intelligence Committee, I then flew like a gentleman under the guise of former candidate for governor. I set up the meeting with his aides that I was coming, and I flew to Washington to hand Congressman Burchett this DIA internal alleged, okay, let's be fair, alleged DIA internal investigation memo would listed all of the names of the military people, the date of this video, how it was smuggled out, um, who was the mastermind of this video. His name was Joseph Yeager. I thought he was a guy that lived in San Antonio. I actually met his ex-girlfriend. That wasn't him. I thought he was a guy living in Seattle. It wasn't him. I thought he was a man my age that died early in Philadelphia. His family called me and said, our Joseph Yeager, Johnny was in the Marines for a week. It's not your guy. I finally found the Joseph Yeager. Folks, it's a bombshell. He worked for the State Department. I found him in CIA released FOIA documents on the CIA website. I have a photo of him. He was not Victor, but he masterminded the thought and what to do with this film after it was brought out of Area 51. Joseph Yeager, I've got a photo of him. He worked for the State Department in the 50s. Just you know, crazy, um, crazy stuff that harkens to me that um, that this there's more than this just being people whistling by the graveyard or the by this film saying it's a hoax. And another thing I want to bring up, I agree with people seeing the black screen with just the alien's head popping out of the blackness. I just want people to know that was not the original VHS tape. The original VHS tape showed the entire thoracic chest region of the being, the arms, the shoulders, the neck. It was a bluish hue. It showed the military general to the left and the right in the foreshadow. It was the production company that made it dramatically dark, spookier, more dramatic. And I think ruined everything because it made people instantaneously think this was a puppet hiding in the dark. And I understand that. I understand that. But the original videotape will show in the documentary is bluish. It's grainy, it's bluish, and you see the whole being's upper body.
Yeah, I would love. It sounds like you might have just alluded to that, but it sounds like you actually have a copy of that VHS.
Yes. Well, we have a copy of the copy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, but more
Yeah.
or less the copy. All right. Well, so I actually, since you brought that up, I understand that you're working on sort of presenting this in more of a documentary format, kind of in a
Right.
nice, digestible piece of material. Could
Right.
you tell us about that? I know you don't want to advertise that because I think it's important to keep this, pure to that alien interview video, but at least give people an idea of what the process has been like for you and where you are.
Right. And again, trying not to be labeled as a con, a grifter, that wants money. I haven't asked for money for 5 years. I'm into this for $20,000. So there is no con, there is no grift. I don't want anyone to send me money. Click like and subscribe. I want to get that across. So finally, after start, finish, the documentary project is on the desk of unscripted television at a network as we speak. Um, if that isn't purchased, because we still need money to recreate the alien, we want to do voice analysis of Victor, and then all of the editing and production and going to other filming locations, and we have about 30 to 40 hours in the can that we have to edit and put in. I mean, it's a big ordeal. But we have finally gotten to the finish line where it's on the desk of somebody that can greenlight this, and we start editing and producing and whatnot. And if that doesn't happen, we'll take it to Netflix. We'll take it anywhere we possibly can. And as my backup, I am doing a talking head, very cheap documentary where I am just going to be sitting at a table and not only talking about the investigation, but talking about the lackluster performance of Congress, our media, the reporters, and how hard it was to convince Hollywood to do the third final chapter in this alien interview process. And I think that video, which is entitled, a working title is The Bird Dog, because a member of the alleged Avery, which is a group of retired scientists and military intelligence people that meet once a year, and somebody said that they have bird names they call each other by. That is not true. That story is not true. That is a urban lore. But one of them said, "Well, if we're the birds, you're a pain in the ass. You're like the dog that goes into the bushes and scatters all the birds." He's like, "You're the bird dog." So my producer said that is a great name for your own little documentary. And so I have like a backup thing where I at least know that will come out if it takes another 6 months for this documentary to matriculate. And that's part of the Hollywood game. People tell me, "Oh, my documentary took 15 years. This is not going to take 15 years," but it's been a hell of a struggle because I started, asking for Hollywood's help because they have the money. I don't want money from UFO people. That's being a grifter. That's being being a con man. But I just want to keep it pure. I don't want the UFO community to pay for this. Let's let people with deep pockets finish this off. And so I'm very excited for that to come out. And all of the names will come out, all of the video examination, the FX people, um, the examination of the being, revelatory information about Victor. Because, James, people told me 5 years ago, prove who Victor is, you prove the video. If you prove he's an actor, well, then the video's a hoax. If you prove he's with the government or was with the government, well, why is a government employee, a retired one, I might want to add, walking around with a 70 to $100,000 video production of an alien? And how did he coordinate this? He didn't drive. He took a cab to the video production facility. So we have a we have an a government retired government biologist who didn't drive, coordinating a Hollywood production, including animatronic being and doesn't fly. But we know who Victor is. Again, I told everybody, could that all be a hoax and complete bull? I don't believe so, but it's possible. But I definitely have Victor's picture, and it's not this Bob Dean that every skeptic says, "Oh, it's Bob Dean," and it's not Bob Dean. And I've showed the picture now to 3 podcasters who have all went on camera and on the public and said, Jon Stewart is onto something. Victor is not Bob Dean. We have never seen him before in our lives, and something's up with this. So we're excited. We're excited. This is going to be the year.
That is very exciting. 2024. I think we're looking at potentially the most well orchestrated psychological operation of all time, expanding over not just decades, but potentially centuries. Or we're looking at there potentially being more than just a kernel of truth to a lot of the stories that folks may have heard. So I think that's important to keep in mind. One thing that you
Absolutely.
noted was your sort of the lackluster response of folks within the government, principally the legislative branch, the Congress. So I just switching gears slightly, I'm sure you're familiar. There was a report released, maybe it was last week, which was kind of a summary of essentially the history of the UAP or UFO investigation, and that was released from Arrow. I think a lot of folks
investigation. Yeah,
I think a lot of folks felt that to be lackluster. Once again, only real word for that, and disappointing, right? So
very. Yes.
where I kind of start to struggle a little bit is, there's the sense that I have that we've had multiple individuals, to name a few, Grush, people such as yourself, and I understand there's many more who have maybe not been publicly known, who have presented this type of evidence, but we don't see a lot of movement, at least, as an everyday citizen, right? So what's your perspective? Are you optimistic that we can actually get to a point where we have some more quote unquote disclosure, or is that something that's going to have to come from a grassroots movement?
I am painfully skeptic, a painful skeptic that we are going to see any kind of measurable disclosure from the government. I'm sorry, folks. I know there's 40 people that want to come forward. Um, to the skeptics and the haters out there, they're not going to bring any material. They might bring firsthand stories, but all of you haters are just going to trash them like you trash David Grush because they don't have the documents because they're unwilling to go to jail for stealing documents. So it's all going to be conjecture and word of mouth stories. So it's not going to do anything for the UFO community, and it's not going to do anything for the media. The only change that I see, other than my documentary really gaining traction worldwide. The only other uh, change that I see doing measurable damage towards disclosure is catastrophic disclosure. The alleged another 1960s alien interview that I'm sorry, that Daniel Sheen and John Lear said is floating out there. Boy, if there's a 1960s alien interview that comes out, boy, that's sure going to give credence to my 1991 interview. If somehow a cameraman, an Air Force cameraman or somebody can bring out a cache of documents or photos, even from a different country, which is, I think, that's where the catastrophic disclosure is going to happen. Another country showing you a video and saying to the United States, we don't care you're not going to tell us what to do. We want to be upfront with the public. um, that is really going to be the only thing that really changes the narrative and moves the ball forward. I have absolutely no faith in our government. It's the typical. It's like when I started in pro wrestling in the '80s. It's just like the mafia, closed shop, impossible to get in. Once you get in, they want absolute silence, and you'll live a great life, but you can never get out, and you can never tell the secrets. Right? Isn't that basically the crux of being a crux of being a congressman or a senator? So I have absolutely no faith in our government. I'm sorry to say that. I love the military. I was one of the people that helped keep the North Chicago VA hospital open and stop the closure in 2000 with Senator Mark Kirk. I'm proud of that. I love our military. I love, the military sits on the top of my pyramid, what's important with this country. But the legislative branch of our country, You could sweep most of them up and put them in the trash bin of history. They're worthless. And the Schumer amendment, and I got to say this on camera, Senator Chuck Schumer, for calling Israel to the carpet, whether you believe it or not, just being able to open a dialogue about the direction of what Israel is doing. And Chuck Schumer having an amendment where he wanted eminent domain, the ability to go to Lockheed, Raytheon, Boeing, these other intelligence, these other subcontractors, and say, open up the facility door now, open it. I want to see what's inside. And every normal person will be like, that's a great idea. It's taken out of the legislation now. Why? Well, I understand they want to keep things secret, but at some point, the American government was going to want to know. And I want to say this on this point to the politicians. You can win an election or two. You might even have the ability to live with yourself, but eventually the people find out. They always do. And when that happens, the peasants, and I'm one of them, the peasants, they're not coming to my house. They're coming to your house. Remember that. And I'm not threatening people. I just want to make legislators in this country think that eventually people are going to get sick and tired. And when they see the crazy money we've spent over 70 years, instead of helping the less fortunate, instead of helping people with after school programs and bettering our schools, our roads, our infrastructure, when they see the money we've spent on aliens and craft, there's going to be a bloodless revolution in this country. I am saying this. I have said this. I will not back away from that because it's a crime.
Taxpayer money being misallocated once again. Yeah, so I think I can speak for both of us. We're fiercely American. We believe that this is an amazing country and we love this country. And that's why it makes my heart break to see these kinds of things happen at the end of the day, because I see, and I think you do as well, a future where we don't have a lot of the poverties that we have, a lot of the problems that we have. These technologies have the potential to revolutionize the world that we live in. And we have to continue fighting for that, right? So out of respect for your time, we're wrapping up here, but I do want to just touch on two key points. So firstly, if we don't take anything away from what we just did, other than one thing, what is the biggest thing you want people to take away from this interview here?
That I have come to this investigation as a person that wanted to find the truth. I still want to find the truth. And I hope you find safe harbor in the fact that you have a UFO researcher here, a ufologist that tells you, I still don't know for sure. Can you respect that? I hope you can respect that. I think I know 87 to 90% of what is going on with this film, but I always want to leave the door open for something that I never anticipated. I found out who Victor was, and this film has never credibly been debunked by anyone in 30 years. You can't explain that other than the fact that something bizarre is going on with the provenance of that film. Remember that. This is not for the skeptics, the haters, this is for open minded people that hear my journey, hear my stories, hear what the intelligence community has done, provable to my phone and to my life electronically. And the totality of evidence would lead anyone to say, this guy is onto something. And scary as it may be, the fact might be that this film is real.
Yes, that is a scary prospect for some people. So lastly, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up after that, and I'll stop the recording, and I just want to thank you after that. But is there anything that I haven't asked you? Is there anything that you want to make sure to mention here that we haven't touched on today?
Yeah, I just, I want to tell your viewers that the bombshell that I have dropped for the past year and a half, which I can't believe is not running wildly in the UFO community, was given to me by a special agent with the National Air and Space Intelligence Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I was put in contact with him. He eventually ghosted me. He then sent me 3 months later a terse email drafted by the Pentagon to never contact him again because I submitted very hyperbolic questions to his commanding officer. But one of the things he told me was, and I will leave your viewers with this, which I think is more important than the MJ-12 documents or the Wilson-Davis memo, which is the new designation of extraterrestrials of people in these special access programs. And the new official designation of extraterrestrials is SABER, like a sword, SABER, synthetic astrobiological extraterrestrial races. Put that in the bank. That is the designation now that the government people within the know, subcontractors within the know, refer to officially as these visitors and as these beings. SABER, synthetic astrobiological extraterrestrial races. It was, I think, that revelation to me, and then getting back to the Pentagon, that I believe was the wick that was lit on the powder keg of the intelligence community starting to focus electronically on my life. The fact that I was giving that hyper top secret designation of extraterrestrials. And I hope people find that fascinating and tell other people in the community. And because we're all, our only currency in ufology, our only currency is stories, and that's what we trade on. And people ask for that. We want names. We want information. Well, I've given you some names. I've given you some pretty explosive information. And let me tell you something, on the top of the pyramid of hyperbolic information in the UFO alien phenomenon, SABER is the word. And that's the new designation. And I'll leave you with that.
Thank you very much, Jon Stewart. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. We really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.